Morning, Tom. How are you feeling? We hear you were out last night with one certain Shadow Health Secretary.
Yes, always Tuesday night at conference is one of those largest nights, and yesterday was no exception, mainly focusing on a party hosted by the Daily Mirror newspaper, a host of shadow cabinet members singing karaoke, Keir Starmer turning up for a speech, and everyone having rather a good time. And it does feel that the Labour Party has had a good time over the last 4 days, that this has been a conference that has gone fairly well without much of a hitch for the Labour Party leadership. They needed to do a few things over these 4 days. They needed to present themselves as a government in waiting, moving beyond the carping from the sidelines opposition movement that sometimes they felt like over these last 12 years, and present themselves as something more credible, something more government-like. And that is precisely what the speeches, particularly of the Shadow Chancellor and the Leader of the Opposition, were designed to do, to try and present this as a party that, yes, speaks about inequality, that, yes, speaks about those traditional Labour Party messages, that it wants to raise taxes and the rest of it, but also speaks to a more centre ground pitch, that it doesn't want to, for example, reverse some of these tax cuts that have just come in on the lower paid, that it also wants to promote a greater sense of fiscal discipline. Those are words that we haven't heard from the Labour Party for quite some time. But overall, on the floor of the conference, we felt more of a united party than we have for quite some time here at the Labour Party conference. It doesn't take that much of a long memory to remember last year when Sir Keir Starmer's speech was heckled, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but a host of times during his speech. He had to stop as members of his own party shouted at him from the conference floor. Similarly, there were many different moments of constitutional wrangling over votes and battles at that conference as well. This year, it's been a very different state of affairs, and potentially that's why last night at the Mirror party so many Shadow Cabinet members were so relaxed and indeed so happy. To the very point that the Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, started singing Angels by Robbie Williams, but changing one crucial lyric. He said, "I'm loving Starmer" instead.
Seen it all now. Never mind the conference floor, it's the dance floor at conference where it's at. Tom, I believe I have it on reliable authority. You were obviously in a professional capacity there until something after 3 in the morning. Well done you for being up and with it at 7:15. But look, somebody who wasn't invited last night to that party, Rupa Hook, disgraced herself with the comments she made on a fringe event on Monday. She has since apologised unreservedly for them, but will that do enough for her to be re-accepted into the party?
Yes, it was the one hitch of this Labour Party conference. Things had gone relatively smoothly for the Labour leadership, save for this really off-colour remark that came on Monday from Rupa Hook, saying that Kwasi Kwarteng, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, doesn't sound like a black man when you hear him on the radio. I mean, the most remarkable statement that particularly challenging for the Labour Party. At first, when challenged about these comments, Rupa Hook stood by them. It wasn't until the Conservative Party demanded her suspension, the chairman of the Conservative Party writing to the chairman of the Labour Party with such a demand, and a few hours later a suspension came about, and only then a reverse ferret and an apology. We're not expecting Rupa Hook to be readmitted to the Labour Party any time soon, because there will be a process. She has lost the whip as things stand, but potentially this apology, having come a few hours after the news broke, might well mean that that whip does come back in the fullness of time.
And generally, Tom, at the conference, has the way Keir Starmer's dealt with it, which was pretty quick, has that been welcomed?
Yes, it was fairly quick. The wound was cauterised, although it was a story that percolated for a couple of hours. And I think one of the particular challenges for the Labour Party here is the initial response of Rupa Huq, whereby she stood by those comments. And it wasn't until the announcement of the suspension came about that there was an apology that came about. That might be a little bit tricky, but overall, a fairly quick response from the Labour Party, not wanting this particular unfortunate event to overshadow what was, in the round, a fairly successful conference.